Duxford lørdag 23. september 2017. Airshow. Hurricane.
equipment, VHF and shortwave. We have airborne radar 70 years ago.
So, you mentioned the buildings by number. Whereabouts are they in relation to where we are?
If you go down in, you'll be made very welcome.
All right, David, thank you for that. Great to see you.
Not at all.
We will see what's nearly a Sea Fury in the show later on, in the form of the air leasing operated Fury IS. It's the Iraqi Air Force aircraft debated as the prototype Sea Fury. It is in fact the land-based derivative. So we'll see a Britain Centaurus powered example of that very, very potent piston engine fighter in the show, but very... on their way, the 5 of the 6 Hurricanes that we hope to see participating in formation.
Into free fall at 120 miles an hour. Now they're pulling their parachutes. Now they're looking up, they're making sure they can control those parachutes. Making sure that everything's okay. If not, they'll go away from the stack, they'll discharge their main parachute and get on to their reserve. But everything's okay today. They're now looking around and getting into that famous stack of the Royal Air Force Falcons. The Royal Air Force Falcons are the only parachute display team in the world to be able to do the loose stack. Very close, flying very close to one another. Now I'll give you over to the team coach as he... This is the voice of Gary Marshall, the team coach.
Now, there will be a little dip to left shortly. Getting lots of lift. Turning left 45 degrees, turning left now. Now my turn, now turning left.
Coming now around and lining up now to shoot for those crosses. So ladies and gentlemen, as they land here at Duxford, put your hands together for the Royal Air Force Falcons.
Coming back across the wind right now.
They split off now to land on 2 crosses. And look at the accuracy there is. From 3,000 feet and they all land absolutely on the button. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, these are the Royal Air Force Falcons. And I'll embarrass them because I would like to use the American pun that these are the top guns of their trade. They really are, ladies and gentlemen, the best of the best. Do you agree? And for the salute. The motto of the #1 parachute training school of the Air
The Mark 1, owned by Anglia Aircraft Restorations and operated by Air Leasing. This aircraft served the number 245 squadron, which was based at Trem on the east coast of Scotland, where they took part in shipping protection patrols. The aircraft was 1st of May 1940, later recovered from the beaches near Duxford and restored. So that was our first sight today of the 6 Hawker Hurricanes that form such a special feature of this Battle of Britain this Battle of Britain air show at IWM Duxford. We're about to see a 7th, serviced by the Aircraft Restoration Company, the Avro Lancaster 1 from the Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight.
last.
This has been a very notable season for the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. The flight's 60th anniversary, having been established in 1957 as the Royal Air Force historic aircraft flight at Biggin Hill. It's also, to some extent, been a slightly troubled one, with the precautionary grounding of the Merlin-engined aircraft in mid-August. Thankfully, that has now been resolved, enabling the Lancaster, Hurricanes and most of the Spitfires to once again take to the air. Incidentally, in case you're wondering about the colours of the Spitfire that we see here, the clipped wing Mark 16.
And watch the Spitfires and Hurricanes later, you'll see them doing exactly the same technique. Equally, these are tail dragger aircraft, so your noses are high in the air, so for landing and for taxiing. You have to master weaving the aircraft and looking out for where you are ahead. Quite a narrow track of the undercarriage as well, which again is very similar to that of a Spitfire, unlike that of a Hurricane, which has a wider track. This means you have to go and handle the aircraft much more gently on the ground. So the Tiger Moth was marvellous in instilling all these pilot traits which would be putting the pilots in great stead in later years. Now the teams will be forming up into three Vics. This is a Vic formation, is a V formation with the leader at the front and the wingmen either side, left and right of them. And this is important again for Battle of Britain purposes because used, and this is for the approved method in the interwar period and the very early stages of the Battle of Britain for attacking undefended bombers. Because you could concentrate 24 machine guns, 3 lots of your 8, onto the same bomber and therefore annihilate it very, very quickly. However, if you have your fighters being attacked by other fighters, which was not expected, this is a very poor formation to have, and it was quickly abandoned by the Royal Air Force. But here you'll see it would used to be trained again and again on the Tiger Moths and then applied to the fighters. Right, leading the first Vic is the leader of the team, Jeff Nelson, former fighter pilot, flying Phantoms, now captain on British Airways, flying the A320 Airbus. To his right is Mike Vasey, private pilot, and has recently retired from being the owner and chief exec of Vintech, which is the vintage engine technology company, keeping so many of these old, lovely engines in such fine condition. On their left is a remarkable man, David Sister, former fighter pilot, flying Lightnings, and flew to Australia solo in a Tiger Moth back in 1978. Leading the next Vic is Nigel Lemon, who runs an air ambulance service. On his right is Jonathan Turnbull, flying the oldest Tiger Moth in existence. And in fact, if you buy a die-cast model of the Tiger Moth, it'll be this exact model with his exact registration. On his left is Jerry Rendell, a former VC-10 and Concorde captain. And the final Vic is led by Robin Russell with David Wildridge. Robin Russell's a former, you can listen to those gorgeous 130 horsepower de Havilland Gypsy Major engines. sound. So this aircraft was particularly liked by the Royal Air Force and indeed the Commonwealth Air Forces because it's an easy aircraft to fly, but a very difficult aircraft to fly well. And you're seeing it being demonstrated here, being flown very well by these highly experienced pilots. Taking off there to position to the northwest for flight display rather than display as time as the P-40. You can see the Moth Major on the far right-hand side with his straight wings, distinctly different from the swept wing of the Tiger Moth. Now the swept wing was created by taking that very same straight wing and moving the centre forward. And this allowed the instructor who sits in the forward cockpit, allows him to be able to brake. Get those cameras ready. And they're braking. Now they'll turn swiftly towards each other and charge at one another. Robin Russell bringing up the rear with a lovely flourish there. Half cubanate. And now the teams will put themselves into two lines, and they'll now charge at each other, very much like the synchro pair. The 4-1, ridden by Jonathan Turnbull. Bring up the rear, we've got Golden Oldie, 7-2, ridden by Mike Vasey. Then is Tiger Rag at 14-1, ridden by Nigel Lemon. And last and least, it's Tiger Feet, 21 outsider, ridden by Jerry Rendell. I think we'll all agree that will be a flying finish. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes
the Hawk 75 or P-36 that we were to have seen with this aeroplane was the predecessor of the P-40 family. The B-1710 engine in place of the Pratt & Whitney twin wasp radial of the P-36, but the design was very quickly developed. The pursuit fighter, that's what the P in the designation stands for. They were also procuring the likes of the Lockheed P-38 Lightning and Bell P-39 Aerocobra at the same time for test purposes, but the commonality between the P-40 and the earlier P-36 was certainly a factor in the decision. At the time of the Pearl Harbor attack of the 7th of December 1941 that brought the United States into World War II. C model that we see here was known as the Tomahawk 2B to the RAF, and that aircraft flown by the USSR during World War II. And further Tomahawks that were diverted from an RAF order went to China for use as the initial equipment of the American Volunteer Group, the famed Flying Tigers, in the fight against the Japanese. P-40C was built in 1941. It went to the US Army Air Corps that April. For a time, the unit that operated this aeroplane was based in Puerto Rico for use on coastal and anti-submarine patrols. Reliably and effectively. And flown, as I'm sure the Duxford regulars amongst you will have guessed from the fact that he included an immaculate 8-point roll in his display by the chief pilot of the fighter collection, Pete Kinsey. The Fury. And the Fury 1, of which this is an example, was just a splendid aircraft in every way. During that period, it was the first RAF squadron fighter able to exceed 200 miles an hour. It was, as we'll see, demonstrated in this display, extremely agile. Its glide performance, by the standards of the time, was splendid, which made it an excellent interceptor, though of course there was the natural trade-off for some range that came with that. Just 117 ones RAF. They used to put on the most spectacular displays of the time at the Hendon pageants of the 1930s, sometimes tied together in formation. Meanwhile, the Nimrod came about when the Fleet Air Arm of the Royal Navy needed just 42 of the Mark I Nimrods were produced. Production switched to the Mark II, which incorporates various changes. It's got arrestor gear, it's got a degree of sweep back to the wings, different cooling system, a tail wheel as opposed to a tail skid, a gas start system, and a more powerful version of the Rolls-Royce Kestrel engine. Charlie Brown, who's flown both of the Nimrods, Mark I and the Mark II, says that the Mark II is a much more civilised and urbane aircraft. There was a good chance there on that pass to see the sweep back of the wings of the Nimrod 2 in the lead, as opposed to the straighter wings of the Fury 1 behind. After Italian forces invaded Abyssinia, posing a threat to British interests in the region, evilly said of that deployment, the Navy dashed off to the eastern Mediterranean to look fierce, and fierce in inverted commas. The sole survivor was delivered to the RAF in November 1935. It went to number 43 Squadron at Tangmere the following June, where it was nicknamed Queen of North and South and flown regularly in his more junior pilot days by the later Air Chief Marshal Sir Frederick Rosier. Rosier became a distinguished wartime pilot. After World War II, he served as the Air Officer Commanding of RAF Fighter Command. And in notations in his flying logbook, he called this very Fury perfect. And to see it perform, I think we'd agree that it is certainly something approaching perfection. The aircraft went to South Africa in 1940. It was flown there by the South African Air Force. Into land first comes the Nimrod 2. That was in the hands of Dave Harvey, former RAF Hawk display pilot, who now flies regularly for the Historic Aircraft Collection. And that'll be followed shortly by the Fury 1. Incidentally, the Historic Aircraft Collection have got the latest, or next addition to their airworthy fleet, their magnificent Airco DH9. Here, it's awaiting its maiden post-restoration flight. You can read much more about it in the souvenir programme, and if you go, they've got various items from the restoration, and of course there is a second DH9 here in the airspace building. That will be the most unbelievable sight over Duxford when it takes to the air. It's already pretty unbelievable that we get to see aircraft like that Nimrod 2 and like that Fury 1 being touched down so gently by Charlie Brown. And Charlie is absolutely the right person to fly that aeroplane, with his very distinctive handlebar moustache and his penchant for wearing the appropriate garb of the era. Certainly fits in. Thank you to HAC for that beautiful display. They hold regular open days here at Duxford where you get to meet the pilots, look very closely up at the different aircraft in their fleet, the Fury, the Nimrod, DH9, the Hurricane and the Spitfire 5 that we'll be seeing later in the show. The next one is in October, I believe on October the 21st. And to get details of ticketing, again, go to their stand in the Air and Sea hangar where the DH9 is parked, and I believe there are a few posters around the site to promote that as well. And this next display is a scenario that we've never really seen at World War II, because while this is a Battle of Britain Air show, we're also looking at operations in other theatres of the Second World War. And they've just called to tell air traffic. 1112 M1L Bouchon. That's the Spanish-built Merlin engine version of the 109, and off the hard. They'll be back shortly. Meanwhile, the Make-War display team don't need anything like the full length of Duxford's grass, in which you can get airborne, so they're going to go from pretty much the Yulka CO1 depicted by modified Bauer's Flybaby Ultralight. There's Matt Boddington and Steve Slater's superb Royal Aircraft Factory B2C, and they'll be followed off by a trio of triplanes. First of all, the Sopwith variant. And then the unmistakable shapes of the two Fokker DR1s, the Dreideckers. So they're going to make their way off to form up to the south, a Soviet airfield somewhere on the eastern front of here. The Messerschmitt, played by the Bouchon, comes in for a strafing pass. And it looks like it might have had a bit of heavier ordnance underneath its wing. The colour scheme on this Bouchon, perhaps as far removed from Eastern Front colours as you could get. It's a recently applied desert scheme that was put on this aircraft for the Flying Legends show earlier this year. It has been retained since. It now looks tremendously weathered. But for the moment, over this airfield on the Eastern Front, our 109 seems to be having it all its own way, but I expect that'll soon change. Certainly wasn't about to shake the Yak 3s off in the initial part of this engagement. And you'd certainly expect that in a low-level fight such as this, the Yak 3 would be able to win the day against its Messerschmitt opponent. The Yak 3, a type that first came into large-scale service in the summer of 1944, was bought 10 years.
We've got the 6 today. We have the BE-2C, the Sopwith triplane, 2 of the Fokker triplanes, and the CL1. Most of the pilots in World War I had about 10 hours of flying experience if they were lucky. So they didn't last very long. The average time that you'd have a pilot flying in World War I was 2 weeks, especially as these airbases were not the easiest to fly. We've got the triplanes already on the tail of the Sopwith triplane. And the other one's going up. Trench strafer, he would quite often be down low and over the trenches where the soldiers would try and shoot at him with their rifles. The Akak that you can see was also known in the First World War as Archie. The white Archie is the Allies and the black Archie was for the Germans. Now coming across in front of us, he's acquired the wreck and returned it to the UK, where after 6 long years of a rebuild, Biggles biplane returned to the skies again in May 2011. Biggles biplane is designed to look and sound and fly just like the original 1914 aircraft. Just as the original, its wings are made from spruce spars and ribs covered with a linen-type fabric. The long ash undercarriage skids ahead of the large diameter main wheels were fitted to allow the aircraft to fly from rough fields, as few proper airfields existed. Now you can see how a World War I dogfight developed. With relatively low airspeeds, the main tactic was to keep turning to stay out of the opponent's sights. This worked in the Germans' favour. A prevailing westerly wind would blow the aircraft back towards the German bases, forcing Allied aircraft to break out and dash for home. As you can see, the Fokker triplane has yet again got the BE-2 in his sights, and then up the other end, the Sopwith triplane is being chased by the other Fokker. The Fokker triplane was designed by Reinhold Platz. The DR1, or Dreidecker, was a direct attempt to copy the successful Sopwith triplane, although it used a more advanced steel tube fuselage and cantilever wings, which did not need wire bracing. Wings are technically unnecessary and only there to boost a pilot's maw. It's armed with 2 forward-facing Spandau machine guns. It was highly manoeuvrable. It outgunned the Sopwith pups and triplanes, and it was initially pitted against and was a favourite mount of the number of German aces. The legendary one obviously being Manfred von Richthofen. No original DR1s survived. The triplane became operational with the Royal Naval Air Service in early 1917 and was immediately successful. The triplane was nevertheless built in comparatively small numbers, about 150 in total, and withdrawn from active service as Sopwith Camels arrived in the latter half of 1917. So flying our aeroplanes today, flying one of the Fokker triplanes is Pete Bond. Pete was an airline pilot flying for KLM Cityhopper, but I found out last night that he retired last year, so now he is a gentleman of leisure. He's previously displayed the Pilatus P2, and in his spare time he builds replica aircraft, having completed his Fokker DR1 in 2010 and is currently working on a Sopwith Camel. He also rides vintage roadside and flies Pit Special. Like you, he was flying the B2C. His first flight in an aeroplane was at age 1. He also then spent a lot of the time in an aeroplane with my sister and I in the front of the aeroplane, him on the back on my dad's lap, and he would take us off and do aerobatics in this manner. I don't think it'd be allowed today. He got introduced to the World War aviation early. As kids, we were taken over to Ireland, where my father flew a job that he loves, which is his hobby, and he rebuilds old aeroplanes. Flying the other Fokker triplane, we've got Alex. Alex began flying with the Royal Aircraft Establishment in Farnborough Gliding Club when he started his apprenticeship there in 1983. Alex is currently employed. He's an engineer with British Airways. Dave Linney, who's our leader, is in the SC5. He got a PPL in 1965, and then he joined the RAF in 1967, where he flew Harriers. Post-retirement, he's flown Hunters, Canberras and Hawks at RNAS Yeovilton and Falcons from Bournemouth. Trained on Chipmunks by the RAF and the UAS, and then he was selected for BEA and BOEC training. He went on to fly Tridents and BAC 111s, and as I was crew on those aeroplanes as well, Gordon and I flew together over 30 years ago. He's also flown lots of aerobatic aircraft and has been involved with a Youngman and Youngmeister at White Waltham since mid-1980s. As you can see now, they're all just coming round, and I hope this is giving you a really good idea of what it would be like in World War I. They're now going to do a lovely...
My phone's in this. Baby flag. Baby flags.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Great War Team, thanks very much.
And thank you very much, Debs, for telling us all about it, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Dave Linney bringing the SE5A in first. You just see angling off across the grass just to cope that little bit better in the very small scale replica SE5A. With the experience today, they're able to use the whole expanse of the grass on display days such as this, should they wish. Marked grass runway. They can angle off across the field. Of course, in the days when Duxford was RAF fighter station in its early period, and certainly at the Battle of Britain time, it would have, and fighters, the Hurricanes and Spitfires of the Battle of Britain would scramble across the airfield in many different directions. Such things, of course, decidedly frowned upon today. So that aspect of the Battle of Britain we shan't see being replicated in second of the two Fokker triplanes down. They're followed by the BE-2 and then the Sopwith triplane. A reminder now, Planes TV are here recording for the official Duxford Battle of Britain Air Show DVD and Blu-ray. Flies Sander 3A, getting airborne in an extremely short distance off the grass, and then another elegant biplane of the 1930s, the Gloucester Gladiator 1. Mercury engine used on fighters, bombers and army cooperation aircraft, amongst others. So to the Blenheim, an aircraft with a remarkable story behind it. The design was conceived, as many great designs were, as a private venture by the Bristol Aircraft Company. And at that time, Lord Rothermere, the owner of the Daily Mail, was after a high-speed transport aeroplane for his personal use. He funded the Bristol Type 142. Rothermere presented that aircraft to the nation as the Britain First, and it very quickly attracted the interest of the Air Ministry because it was a great deal faster than quite a lot of the contemporary frontline fighters of the mid-1930s. It looked ideal for adaptation into a light bomber, and that was the Blenheim. Blenheim 1Fs like this one were briefly stationed at RAF Duxford with number 222 Squadron, which was reformed here in October 1939 to help prevent Channel shipping from Luftwaffe attacks. The squadron converted to Spitfires in spring of 1940. During the Battle of Britain, Blenheims were active as night fighters, and towards the end of 1940 they were starting to conduct night intruder missions over Germany. Blenheims Walker Hector. Westland's design team met the requirement with this high-wing monoplane with larger undercarriage spats, a good deal of cockpit glazing for the pilot and the observer. It was equipped with two forward-firing machine guns, plus another one for the observer. He would even mount a total of 6 bombs on scud wings on those wheel spats. There were 4 squadrons of these aircraft that were deployed to France at the outbreak of war for artillery spotting and reconnaissance duties. One of them in November 1939 even managed to Like the Blenheim, the Gladiator was initially designed as a private venture, but because the new monoplane fighters like the Hurricane and Spitfire were being delayed, the decision was taken to adopt it. Number 72 Squadron brought them into service first in February 1937. 4 RAF units were flying Gladiators. When war broke out, 2 of them were sent to France. All their Gladiators had been lost within just 10 days of coming up against the Germans in May of 1940. Even so, this was an aircraft that saw service in the Battle of Britain with fighter command, with just one squadron, number 247, stationed at Roborough near Plymouth. Its role was to defend that part of the UK and especially the naval dockyards of that city. However, they had no success, whether by day or by night. But also in use during the Battle of Britain were the Sea Gladiators of 804 Squadron of the Fleet Air Arm of the Royal Navy. They were flying from Haxton on Orkney throughout the battle, again to defend an important naval base, namely that at Scapa Flow. Two of the ultimate in piston engine fight. So they're initially clearing to go and hold, and I expect to form up. On those 2 aircraft to look at the different type of roundel that was used by Fleet Air Arm aeroplanes operating in the Far East. It served with 809 Squadron of the Fleet Air Arm and HMS Attacker and HMS Stalker. In March 1945 it sailed for Ceylon to join the East Indies fleet. That was in advance of Operation Tide Race, the Allied retaking of Singapore. And the Seafire, today operated by Air Leasing, flew on many active operations at that time. It helped provide air support for the Allied landings in Rangoon and Malaya. It carried out offensive sweeps over Japanese air bases. And this one, PP972 is its serial, was one of 809 Squadron Seafires that, aboard HMS Stalker, sailed back into Singapore Harbour on the 10th of September 1945 when the Japanese surrendered the territory back to British control. As the Hurricane had been, the Spitfire was adapted for use by the Fleet Air Arm because there were shortages in the early war period of more bespoke naval fighters. Supermarine had actually proposed a naval version of the Spitfire pre-war, but it was rejected. Then when the Navy actually wanted one, it found that production for the RAF was taking priority. way, we remember the fact that RAF Coastal Command and the Fleet Air Arm were both involved in the Battle of Britain. Coastal Command, not with the particular aircraft type that we're going to see depicted that command is displayed, but the Fleet Air Arm types that actually operated during the Battle of Britain included the little naval fighter that's going to be joining it in the air. And there it is, on its takeoff roll, that little naval fighter, the Grumman FM2 Wildcat. And powering off behind it, before retracting its tricycle undercarriage and climbing away. The Wildcat was one of the first Here's the Catalina, actually bringing the gear up. Area during the early stages of World War II with support from the Focke-Wulf FW200 Condor maritime aircraft. It was an area out of range of existing land-based machines, and the key thing about this was that it was posing a serious threat to the supply convoys coming across the North Atlantic from North America and helping keep Britain restocked and resupplied. That began to change when the Catalina came along. The first batch of 50 was ordered by the British Air Ministry around the outbreak of World War II, followed by many more, for a total of more than 570. It wasn't until 1941 that the first Catalinas came into RAF service. That May, was well established in service with the state plane sailing operated from Duxford. It came here in 2004 and a group of 20 shareholders formed the ownership group. The markings are those of an aircraft representing another of the type's varied wartime roles, namely air-sea rescue. US Army Air Forces operated the Catalina as well. This depicts one of those, an OA-10A, flown by the 5th Emergency Rescue Squadron stationed at Halesworth in Suffolk in early 1945. The specific aircraft in question was given very appropriate nose art and a very appropriate name for an air-sea rescue aircraft, namely Miss Pickup, and that's been replicated on this example. The original Miss Pickup on the 30th of March 1945 landed on the water while it was trying to rescue the downed pilot from a P-51 Mustang. But the crew found they weren't able to take off again in the Catalina because the starboard engine had failed. They then taxied for 90 minutes to get away from the Dutch coast. served with 1832, 846 and 759 squadrons. Into land first in our Battle of the Atlantic pair, plain sailing's Catalina, captained by ex-RAF Hercules and Andover transport pilot Derek Head, and making his debut at a display in the co-pilot seat this weekend, Phil Greenhall, who a few years ago used to display both the L-29 Delphine and L-39 Albatross East European jets on the display circuit. And then the distinctive tubby form of the FM2 Wildcat of the fighter collection, flown for us today by Stu Goldspink. D-Day invasion stripes painted on that Wildcat as part of its Fleet Air Arm colour scheme. A really charismatic naval fighter. Sweet handling aeroplane, the Vampire. Distinctive twin boom layout was a function of the need to try and keep the jet pipe from the engine short, because the power plant, which was developed by de Havilland's chief engine man Frank Halford as the Halford H1, later became the de Havilland Goblin, was thought to be so underpowered that further loss of thrust from a long jet pipe, especially seeing as it was a single engine, would be just too much to bear. Well, it created a very, very elegant machine indeed that first of all was known as the Spider Crab before the name changed to Vampire. It was just too late to see use in War II, that being the second jet to enter RAF service after the Gloucester Meteor. But now here's an old Cold War adversary, the Mikołaj Andrzejewicz MiG-15, represented by the Polish WSK The Edge SB Lim 2.
Alright, just turn it off for a minute.
Pilots obviously know that they've just been engaged by the MiG, and here it is coming in from our right. The endless contrast in designs depicting the onrush of fighter development in the early jet age, strengthening Vampire, swept in MiG-15 as well as wartime jets. Historical Squadron operates the MiG-15 is because, of course, the share many close encounters in the Cold War between Norwegian and Soviet aircraft, and it's not unknown today for this MiG-15 is connected with that. It's the markings of the aircraft flown by the future cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, who was stationed in his Soviet Air Force days at a base at Luostari, close to the Soviet border with Norway. The MiG-15 best known for its exploits during the Korean War, having been two vampires. MiG-15s, even after the Korean War, rather to the surprise. Still allies. The is therefore produced for the MiG-15 of RD-45, which the Soviets later improved significantly themselves at the VK-1. It's one of those that powers this aircraft today. In once again from our left, this time in echelon formation for the break. Brains. Specialists of aviation filming. Behind it is Dragalut, the aircraft operated by Dakota Heritage. Aces High keep theirs at one of the outstanding aeroplanes of all time, without a doubt, conceived as the Douglas Sleeper Transport to operate sleep. On D-Day, they towed gliders and dropped paratroops, and they continue to do that on all the other major airborne operations during the Liberation 7s that were fitted with snatch gear to pick up troop-carrying gliders that had landed on the Normandy battlefields and hopefully recover them for future use.
Oh no, what more jets? Give me jets and warmth. Give me jets and warmth.
On the evening of the 6th of June 1944, the aircraft named Dragalut because of the fitting of that glider snatch gear, the second one in this formation, was involved in Mission Elmira, supporting the glider-borne assault by elements of the US 82nd. Two C-47s are in the hands of Andrew Dixon with his co-pilot Clive Edwards, and Peter Kuipers and his co-pilot Mark Edwards. Andrew and Peter, the other two B-17 captains, along with Roger Mills. And here they are, forming up, out to our right, the Flying Fortress and the two Skytrains. The members of the Sally B Supporters Club. Some of them, of course, escorted on their missions over occupied Europe by the P-47 Thunderbolts and P-51 Mustangs of the 78th Fighter Group, which was stationed at Duxford Airfield, then known as Station 357 of the Army Air Forces between 1943 and 45. Team will be pulled into its parking space, and you'll be able to go there and sign up for the Supporters Club, and it brings various benefits with it, including the chance to take a tour of the aircraft while it's on the ground here before the flying display tomorrow, if you're coming to the show tomorrow. And as well as that, of course, you're helping keep the aeroplane airworthy. An incredible record that the aeroplane has been operated in private civilian hands, given the costs and all of the... Anyway, the P-51 that had the snag and made that precautionary landing has now been towed clear, so it's all systems go on the flight line with a large number of Spitfires starting. Sorry for that brief delay, but of course we did have to clear that aeroplane to enable landing to take place on the grass runway, and with that out of the way, we're now ready to get on with the show. Got the Anglia Aircraft Restoration Spitfire 14 taxiing out to the hard runway. That's going to take off first because that is acting as the Joker. If you come to the Flying Legends shows here, you know what the Joker is. If not, well, it's the act devised by Stephen Gray, the founder of Flying Legends and of the Fighter Collection, to fill in while the main formation is taking Flying Legends, the Malvo finale, in this case on Spitfire formation. So 13 of the Spitfires that were arrayed on the grass flight line have taxied out. We'll be seeing the three others, the three Mark 1As, taking part in our finale display alongside the Blenheim, the Gladiator, American Control. Here we go, rolling the 13 Supermarine Spitfires.
Weygand had called the Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin. Upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization. Upon it depends our own British life and the long continuity of we can stand up together, all Europe may be free, enlightened world may be restored, broad-handed land. But if we fail, then the whole world, including the United States, including all
They're attacking. Oh, otters! Hey, Luftwaffe.
be photographing this, so we'd like you to take part. And it'll be during the first pass, which will be very obvious, but Ben will remind you.
So there goes the aircraft that's going to lead our finale salute into the air, the Bristol Blenheim of the Aircraft Restoration Company. Then we've got the 3 Supermarine Spitfire 1As. Followed by the pair from Comanche Fighters. Production. The Luftwaffe decided to withdraw both the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka dive bomber from the battle and to cut back on use of the twin-engined Messerschmitt Bf 110 fighter. The single-engine, single-seat Bf 109s would now be hard-pressed. It was on the 7th of September 1940 the Luftwaffe stepped up its raids against London. It proved in the event to be a tactical mistake. RAF Fighter Command was able to meet that challenge. The Germans, it turned out, had severely underestimated the RAF's strength. Just over a week ago was commemorated Battle of Britain Day on the 15th of September. That marks the date on which the heaviest Luftwaffe raids on London yet were met with a decisive RAF response. On that day, 56 Luftwaffe aircraft were lost, as against just 28 by the RAF. 2 days later, Hitler postponed his invasion plans for the United Kingdom indefinitely. It was a crucial victory for the whole of the RAF, especially, but not so. 927 pilots and other aircrew are officially recognised as having taken part in the Battle of Britain. Each of them flew at least one authorised operational sortie with an eligible unit of the Royal Air Force or the Fleet Air Arm of the Royal Navy between the 10th of July and 1340. Of them, 2,300 New Zealand, Palestine, Poland, South Africa, Southern Rhodesia and the United States. 544 of them lost their lives during the period of the Battle of Britain. As the remaining Spitfires come into land, we say thank you to the operators that provided them for today's display, to Air Leasing, to the Fighter Collection, the Historic Aircraft Collection, Martin Phillips, Aero Legends, Historic Line and the Aircraft Restoration Company, the Baltic Fighter Company, Aircraft Restorations, Richard Lake and the Old Fighter Share Company. A sign of the health of the British warbird movement is that every time we do a big Spitfire formation like this at Duxford, even if it's just a year after the last one at one of our September shows, there are always different aircraft, new restorations, new colour schemes to enjoy as part of the spectacle. And just touching down now is one of the two-seaters to which that applies, the T9 of Aero Legends, which made its maiden post-restoration flight just a few months ago. On the finale segment. Spitfire 1As, the Hurricanes. From the left, our Battle of Britain finale formation. Remarkable formation, and one that crucially recalls that it wasn't just a Spitfire. Blenheim and the Gladiator is their big two. Gladiator broken away, downwind to land. And then we'll be seeing the remaining elements running through one more time on their break to land. So all the aircraft now broken to land and recovering.
It's blowing so much cold.
Led by the Blenheim of the Aircraft Restoration Company. Taking the hard runway, leaving the grass clear for the 3 Spitfire 1As. And there, the number 19 Squadron veteran N3200.
Oh, we need to play.
The other 2 Spitfire 1As, owned by Comanche fighters, operated by the Fighter Collection. The first of them, X4650, is the aircraft that you may have seen making the magnificent beach landing in the hands of Dan Friedkin during the making. Comanche fighters, Spitfires, took part in the making of that movie. the Biggin Hill Heritage Hangar Hurricane, bringing up the rear. Formation. Ron Dillon was in the Gladiator. The three Spitfire 1As, followed by Paul Bonnet, Dave Southwood and Alan Wade. The five Hurricanes by Dave Harvey, Clive Denny, Stu Goldsby, Paul Stone and Peter Teichmann. And the Blenheim, he was leading in the Blenheim, helping bring to a memorable close the first day of our 2017 IWF Duxford Battle of Britain Air Show. Thank you so much for your appreciation. We will pass it on to all the pilots. We know that you appreciate their efforts. And also, we must, Colin, say a big thank you also to the ground crew, who, a lot of whom are volunteers, who simply, without their efforts, we wouldn't be able to put on a show like this.
That's absolutely right. There is a vast army of people that work here. That is Duxford, so it's all those guys and ladies that have been working so hard today. Thank you very much indeed. And of course, thank you for coming along today. Without such a wonderful attendance as this, it would be very hard to stage an air show of this quality. So thank you very much for your continued support here at Duxford. The live music for you, that will be performing very shortly. Museum opens until 6 o'clock, I think it is, this evening. So there's no need to rush off to get in the queue to depart. And we've got a big crowd here today, so...
When you do leave us, to reduce your queue time and depart from the museum this afternoon, those of you who are parked at the west end of the site near the Land Warfare Hall in the American Air Museum, when you go out of the airfield, all cars will be turned left when you leave this afternoon, and you'll find links to the A1, the A10,